Hello, my name is Gwen. Today is Wednesday, July the 19th, 2017. The time is about 12:56 p.m. Today I'm going to talk about the 1960s in my experience. What I find when I'm listening to other people on the internet and YouTube and various places, and even in personal conversations, is that we often, as Black people, had different experiences. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences. The reason why I'm going to talk about them is because those experiences in the 60s were part of the steps that led us to where we are now. And I'm going to address them so we can look at some of the missteps that we made so we won't make them again. That's all. So I'm going to give you some of my points of discussion. Okay. The 60s were unique to each person. I'm going to talk about men in the house, starving, welfare, and I was talking about entertainment such as Star Trek and TV shows in general, as well as music and movies. I'm going to discuss some of the funny things that happened. I got a note here for Sugar High, and I'm going to explain that later. Then I'm going to talk about our gasoline and cigarettes, and that's just basically the economy. And I'm gonna talk about the white people that moved around us, and then I'm gonna give you some funny stories so that you can get an idea of the lifestyle and the choices that the kids were making. Because every one of these stories is a young person story, and then I'm gonna talk about one of the differences of the place I lived at compared to a larger city that I went to. In this case, that city was Chicago. We went to a friend's funeral, a friend of the family's funeral, and I was in Chicago, and I had a whole different experience than I had among my peers in the city that I was from. So let's talk about unique to each person. Well, every place in the country was having the similar experience and a unique experience. Out west in California, they were doing things differently than we were in the Midwest. So that's what I mean by unique. But what we did was see media and could see them on TV. We weren't living the life that Angela Davis was. We didn't have Black Panthers, but we did have the Black Muslim, but they were on the fringes. So what I mean by unique is that, well, self-explanatory really, but we weren't doing some of the things they were because that wasn't in our experience. That wasn't a factor. There was different parts of town where white people lived at and stuff, but we didn't care because we had our own everything. That stuff that we had in our neighborhood, uh, which was virtually self-contained, black-owned businesses and black-owned living. It didn't go away till urban renewal when they tore down about a 30 block radius of black family homes and black businesses, approximately a 30 blocks radius. That is 5 blocks over and 5 blocks down. Well, 6 blocks down. Let's see, from 15th Street down to about 7th Street, thereabouts. A whole bunch of um, um, blocks of businesses. No, not 15th Street, more like 13th Street. Yeah, more like 13th Street till about 7th or 8th Street. And so those were businesses and little small black owned and black ran businesses that went away from the neighborhood under the guise of urban renewal. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because that's one of the little steps. We didn't mind the idea of urban renewal because we thought it was progress, but in fact, it was regression. So don't fall for that one. Don't let them pull that on you. Right now, they call something similar like gentrification in other words, but in our time, it was called urban renewal. They even used the term later on when they wanted to take away somebody's property. These are white people. They used it was blighted. I think they called it blighted, and they took away all these people's properties and built an extension to the airport in our town. Anyway, so all of that's relevant because it was my experience, but other people were having different experiences in different cities in varying degrees. Let's talk about men in the household. My grandmother was a single mother when she moved to that town because she left my grandfather. She had about 10 kids and she left with her last four because the rest of them were grown and adult. And then my mom moved in with my grandmother when she left my father. And so my uncle was like 18 months older than me. And so my mom is about 20 years older than me. So that's the way it was. And I'm not in no way the oldest grandchild. The oldest grandchild was like 10 years older than the youngest child that my grandmother had. So that was a long lifetime. But anyway, my grandmother left my grandfather because they were having trouble in the marriage. And my mom left my father, not because it was trouble, but because she had a different view of what she wanted out of a marriage. And then she later remarried, and married my stepfather. But before she married my stepfather, there was a time when she lived with my grandmother. And so me at about three or four, and my uncle at about four and five, and his bigger sister and his other bigger sisters and brothers. So that was in my grandmother's household while my mom stayed there temporarily. But when my mom did move out, she moved into a garage apartment that she was barely able to pay the bills. She needed to have somebody sit me while she went to a job in nursing in the suburbs. And she was barely able to make rent. It was very difficult. She didn't have a man in the house. And so that was hard. My grandmom didn't have a man in the house, and it was also hard because she worked as a cook out in the suburbs, a domestic, yeah, chef, cook, whatever, and she prepared the food for a white family. Little did we know that these were middle class white families. Now that I know the difference in classes, we just knew that they paid her, and so she lived in the projects. These projects in this Midwest city was these are four-story buildings. It's not like Cabrini Green, those high-rise apartments and stuff like that. These were four-story buildings. And I don't know what the name of those projects in Chicago that there's always in the sociology books and the psychiatry books. But these were four-story apartments. Each one had his own private door. Each apartment had its own little front yard and little porch space. And these were pretty well maintained projects. And sometimes when I say project, excuse me, is a step up, it was because you had to get on the waiting list. But the reason why you wanted to get on the waiting list was because some of the slumlord apartments throughout the city that black people rented were horrendous. They were bad, really bad. So sometimes the projects was a step up. At least you got good solid walls, good windows. The building had to be maintained at a certain level. A slumlord apartment, it didn't. You rented a hovel, so to speak, and sometimes they were really bad. No security. You might even have to share bathrooms, all that. But a place in the projects, yeah, it was a step up. It was a step up. You got a working refrigerator, working stove, running water. And then some people, that was a step up from where they were. So the projects always had a waiting list because it was a nice place. You could paint your walls, do your floors, put a linoleum down, had a little, haven't had to make a little good nest for yourself. Now about men in the house. Well, in those days, it was presumed that the man can or earn some kind of living, whether he had education or not. He was able to take care of himself, so that was a minimum. But not all of these men were men that took care of their families or took care of their children. Fortunately, in the projects that my grandmother lived in, and that I was able to stay in, was that there was some parents, two-parent households all around us, and several families with two-parent households. And so we were fortunate to see what it looked like, but even though you don't have it in your household, you knew what it looked like. But before welfare, let's talk about that. Because I know they like to say that welfare put the men out of the house and made it all those things. And yeah, it did. But before that, there were kids starving. When I was in school, I remember in the sixth grade, one of our classmates starved to death. That was before food stamps. And so, yeah, if it can get food in your mouth and you have to feed kids, I can't argue with food stamps. If I can get somebody with a roof over your head and you've got kids, I can't argue with welfare. Or they call it ADC, AFDC, or ADC, or Aid for Dependent Children. I'm not going to be mad at that. I remember walking with my grandmother and my uncles and aunt, her children, and we're trying to go to the store to get a little bit of food to feed us. And the grocery store man gave my grandmother a line of credit, and she was able to get a basket or a bag full of food. There was no man around, and that was before welfare and before food stamps. Wasn't no men feeding us. These women had to get it their own, and they would work sun up to sundown and beyond, trying to make a little bit of money out of these white families as domestics. They would get up and early in the morning, catch the bus out to the suburbs, and get home late at night from the suburbs. There were no men in the household already. These people, we were starving. We were hungry. Fortunately, I was young enough to not be hungry, but my aunt will tell you stories of herself being hungry and no food in the house. I have seen us with that one pot of beans, and I remember dropping my bowl of beans, and the family cringed because it was so little, but they gave me a little more, and everybody else had to sacrifice a little bit of theirs. I didn't know at the time because I was that young, but I remember them, staring at it and cringing, sort of, and I didn't know what was wrong because I knew that the pot was there and there was more in there, but it had to go around, with all the mouths to feed, so everybody had to take a little less. That's hunger, and that's people not having what they need. The men were there, but they were on the fringes. I remember when my in her house, she was a friendly lady, so she let her friends, her male friends, come up and talk. And in those days, you could sit at somebody's table talking as friends without there being any sexual interest. These are platonic friends. None of these were her boyfriend. And they would be sitting at the tables talking and laughing and drinking and smoking. And then she got to where she said, well, if you're coming up here to smoke and stuff like that, at least bring a loaf of bread. And so that's what they did. They would bring a loaf of bread or some butter or some milk, some kind of food item to come hang out with her. So that was like their entrance fee. And I thought that was a pretty good idea. When she wasn't hanging out, and she finally did get some time to herself, she would sit at the kitchen table and read and look out the window. A pretty calm life. And everybody smoked in those days. In those days, cigarettes were about 25 cents a pack, and gas was about 25 cents a gallon. I wanted to make sure that you understood that. So, yeah, welfare was helpful to the people who needed it, and that was a blessing. I can't complain about that. So were food stamps. And excuse me, there was, yeah, I don't have nothing else to say about that because it had. Ooh, I just ate some popcorn and pop. Ain't no telling what sound's gonna come out of me. So sorry. Now, about entertainment. Star Trek was like one of our favorite TV shows during that time. Like one time I was walking home, walking back over there, and I was coming into the court, and it was like a ghost town. Usually it's all lively with kids running and playing and talking and stuff like that. And mind you, when we ran and played, we didn't play in our yards. We played on the sidewalk. So we had grass in the yards, and the court was a pretty looking place. It looked nice. Flower pots on the porches and all of that. And it was well maintained and well taken care of by the people who lived there. But anyway, this time I'm walking in the court on the end, and it is deserted. I laugh and think about it like a tumbleweed blowing by because it was so deserted. And then I walked in the house and realized Star Trek was on. Star Trek was just coming on. So everybody in the neighborhood would stop what they're doing and go watch Star Trek. It was that important to us at the time. So were some of the other shows like that. That time, the little funny show like the Beverly Hillbillies would come on, and shows like that. Also, TV shows like Donna Reed and Father Knows Best and the Real McCoy and all of those TV shows would come on in the household. These were people who were living what we considered the ideal life. It was being sold to us as an ideal life, a perfect life. The father was the head of the household and he brought home the money. We might watch something like Dick Van Dyke because it was a good TV show at the time with Mary Tyler Moore and Dick Van Dyke. And we would watch these shows where the father was in the household, but he was a white man. You see, we were being indoctrinated. We didn't know at the time. And so we were watching Donna Reed with the pearls and the high heels on in the kitchen. The father would come home and on Ozzie and Harriet, I think, and prop his feet up. She'll bring his slippers and he'll sit down and read the paper while she'd be in the kitchen doing something. We were living to believe that that was the perfect lifestyle. This was before the women's movement. The women's movement was to get out of that lifestyle. Black women weren't having that lifestyle because black women had to work outside the household. We were somehow believing that we were less than what we're supposed to be as black people because we had to have our mothers work outside the household. White women, we were believing that white women were perfect because they were able to stay home, and we were led to believe white men were perfect because they could take care of their family and not have his wife work outside the household, outside the house. She didn't have to. She had the white picket fence, a little dog, and the little car in front, and that, okay? So we're already being indoctrinated. Now, movies. At that time, we didn't know that we were saving the Hollywood movie industry, but we were watching movies like the black exploitation movies, sure enough, and karate movies. Karate movies. We call them karate movies, but they're really martial arts movies from China and Japan. We didn't mind. We loved it. We went there every chance we got to go see them. I really did watch Bruce Lee movies when they were first out, first runs. They were right there. They were all a part of our lifestyle. And so we got fascinated, many, many, many black people, and still are fascinated and loving Asian culture. At that time, my favorite female Asian person was Angela Mayo. She could kick some butt and make faces. Love that work. And later it became Michelle Ye. She's still one of my favorites. And I'm happy that she's supposed to be in the new Star Trek episode where the women were. That's based around women. And I say thanks goodness because Lord knows we've seen so many men. White men. I'm so tired of looking at white men and stuff. I don't know what to do. I don't even watch it. I see another white man on a movie. I don't even watch it. Don't because they're boring. We've seen them up, down, all around. Tired of them. So yeah, I'm glad that the women are there, and I'm waiting. I can't wait to see it. Now, about the black exploitation movies. Yes, we watched your Pam Greer's, your Fred Williams, your Jim Brown, Billy D. Williams. All of those. We would watch those first runs. And it was great. I watched Cooley High and all of that. I'm an optimistic personality, so when it's a depressing movie, I don't want to be bothered with it. But I didn't know it at the time. Nowadays, I wouldn't watch a movie like Cooley High. I would rather watch some black man chopping and beating up something than to watch a Cooley High type movie. But other people can't wait to see that intense drama. Is that it doesn't work for me. But during those days, I needed to watch it so that I can get that kind of background or foundation. Let's see what else about the exploitation movies. I didn't know that's what they were. The black exploitation movies. I just saw them as movies. Same thing with the karate movies. We just saw them as movies, and they were good movies. I was one of the we watched Night of the Living Dead on first run, and that was the impetus for the zombie movies thereafter because that was a profound movie. It was good. It was really good. We watched early Dracula movies. They were fun. We had a good time going to the movies. So that was movies and music. Now about the music, there was no generation gap in black music that I hear about in white music. I liked Al Green. My grandmother liked Green. My mama liked Al Green. We all liked James Brown, except my grandma. We all liked Aretha Franklin and Diana Ross and the Martha Reeves, Mary Wells. All of those, we liked them. We liked the Temptations, Dramatics, and we even liked certain white music, like the Four Seasons, where they sing. I think it was Four Seasons, where they Sherry Baby, and we might listen to Ricky Nelson and some of the others, because it was just music we liked. Everybody liked it, and that's what we grew up on. So it wasn't no real generation gap. In the afternoons on a Friday afternoon when you got Saturday off from work, we'd crank up the stereo in the household to dance. All together. We weren't practicing for no performance. This dancing that we would do in the afternoon among each other was the ends. It wasn't the means to the end. It was the ends. And so we would dance and talk and laugh and have a good time, the family, in the afternoon among each other. Sometimes the neighbors come over and we all be dancing all together or not. And my grandma pull out her moves from when she was a girl in 1910. She was born 1910. So these are 1920s moves. My mom would pull out hers and nobody know where it came from. Only time, a funny story is that my mom would do this dance that nobody else could do and nobody else knew how to do, and she's wanting you to dance it with her, and so she's pulling you around and trying to make you do this dance that we don't know how to do, right? Finally her sister that's close to her same age came to town, and we cranked to the music, and finally they danced together and we could finally see what the hell the dance looked like. It's a good little dance, but it was like one of those arm swinging dance. We had been years trying to figure out what the hell she doing. Finally, her and her sister did that dance. We got out the way, mind you, but they did great. They both knew the dance. We didn't. So me and my cousins looking at each other like, wow, finally we get the dance. Because apparently her sister was at home doing the same thing to her kids as my mom was doing to me and my uncles and things. Nobody else knew the dance. Finally, we see the dance. But we're all laughing and having fun in the household in the afternoon, on Friday afternoon, having a nice time just dancing among each other on the same music. So us kids, at the mom pull out her moves, the younger generation pull out their moves, and the little bitty ones can do that, do their thing. And it was just a household of people dancing and laughing and talking and having their antics. Now, the story here is called Sugar High. In the afternoons, when me and my friends get out of school, there was nothing more fun for us to walk to the store, and I'm saying walk to the store and get a 16-ounce Pepsi and 9 oatmeal cookies. And then we'll walk around all over town, wherever we decide to walk to. But meanwhile, we're bouncing around and can't stay still. There was no word like sugar high yet because it wasn't in the language. But apparently that's what we have because we knew we couldn't stand still after when we eating our cookies and drinking the pop, as we call it. We call it soda. We call soda pops pop. And we be drinking our pop and eating our cookies and can't stand still. We'd be bouncing around and jumping. I mean, hopping. And when we stand up and stop to talk, with our friends, we still bouncing. So yeah, that's a sugar high. And that's how we lived. It was funny. Everywhere we had to go to, we actually walked. Nobody was skinny. I mean, nobody was fat. Very few people were fat or overweight because we walked everywhere. And our food was less processed. There was this thing, there's this man that used to come to the neighborhood with a truck of food or on a cart, an open bed truck, and we call him the watermelon man because that's what everybody called these men that would drive the truck through the various neighborhoods in town, calling out food and vegetables. Got some watermelons, got cantaloupe, got this, got that. And the women of the households would come out and buy a few onions, buy a few this, buy a few potatoes, and this stuff would be ripe, wholesome food. And we'd go in the house and cook it up, for that afternoon. And then a few days later, come back with another fresh batch of ripe food. And that's how we got our vegetables pretty much. Finally, when the grocery stores got closer, we stopped going to the watermelon man and getting the food and started going to the grocery store. So that's food for thought. I would like to see the watermelon man coming back around the neighborhoods because the food was better and we were healthier. Agribusiness hadn't got big yet, not like it is now with the hybrid crops and the poison that we're eating. But yeah, there's something absolutely wrong with the food that we get now. Back then it wasn't. If you look at pictures from the old days of the people in the 60s, and you see how they look sort of elongated with narrow hips and long legs and things, even from the 70s, like your old Richard Pryor movies and stuff like that, people were actually built like that. Long, slim bodies. They actually were built like that. So it wasn't age. You can see that on the old people and the young people, these slim bodies. Now they aren't like that. Nothing like that. So there is something different about our food. Now I want to talk about the white girl that moved in. Us girls at about 12, 13, 14 years old were coming of age, and so were the boys at about that same age. My uncle, being a year older than me, had friends that were interested in us girls, and we were different kind of girls, and the neighborhood girls were different kind of girls. We weren't having sex with them because none of us wanted to get pregnant. So we weren't having sex with with my uncle's friends and things like that. Nor would my friends have sex with my uncle. They wanted to, the boys wanted them to, but they wouldn't because we weren't interested. And it was a done deal. Nobody wanted to have sex with them because nobody wanted to get pregnant because we realized that it would ruin our future. So we didn't, and we weren't. They wouldn't get no play from us. Every neighborhood and every school has a few fast girls, as they called them, who would have sex with the boys. But these were girls who, uh, they seldom got pregnant for some reason. But they were having sex with boys. But they were just girls who were wild, I guess. But the boys still pursue relations with the nearest females that they had sexual desire for, and teenage boys have sexual desire for everything. So they were being turned down by me and my friends, but they looked elsewhere and they received elsewhere. Among the things, because my uncle would tell me all of the boys' businesses and boys' things, and among the things they talk about was weak-minded females. Some girls are weak-minded, as he call them, and it was a very important thing not to be weak-minded, and that is let somebody talk you out of your body. You can't be that weak-minded. Other things they talked about was not being weak-minded, but being. Let me pause here for a second. Okay. Now, with weak-minded, they just mean that you shouldn't be so susceptible to suggestion. And these days they would call it pressure, peer pressure, or something like that. But you can't be so susceptible to suggestion that you would be talked into something that you didn't want to do already. So somebody would pressure you into giving up things that are precious to you because you want to fit in or whatever. All of that was considered weak-minded. Now, us girls, and I want to backtrack a little bit because I just skipped over something. Us girls, me and my peer group, as well as my friends, it wound up being about 14 of us. Now, we had various kinds of people all over the neighborhood, and they all had different schemes and schisms about what they wanted to do. Myself and my friends found each other, and this is how that works. Decided what my priorities were and what my goals were, right? And then I looked around for like-minded people, like-minded females who had the same set of values or same set of interests. Like if I had a wanted to smoke, I would have found girls who smoked. If I had a wanted to drink, I would have found other girls who wanted to drink. So that's how you find your peer group. After you find your peer group, you hang out with them. If you're a girl who don't want to smoke and drink, don't go hanging out with the girls who want to smoke and drink, because that's how you get caught up in things that you don't want to do. You hanging out with people who do them. So that's almost common sense, but apparently the younger people nowadays don't understand that. So I gotta say it. So me and my friends found each other because we were interested in the same thing and not interested in the same things. So we weren't interested in smoking, we weren't interested in drinking, we weren't interested in having sex. So we looked around and found each other. I found my friends. Like the first one I found, I told one spoke about on a video previously about the young lady who that I introduced myself when I saw her building her own little go-kart thingy. We couldn't get it to work, but by golly, we wanted to build one. So we wanted to. And so she had an independent mind like I did. And I thought that would be a good friend for me. So I went and introduced myself. Then we met another young lady. So it was three of us, of good girls, as I want to call them now, not then. That was the kind of thing. When I learned my values from a girl that was a year older than me, actually, and that is, me and a good friend of mine used to sit in the park on sunny days in the afternoon. I was in the seventh grade, she in the eighth grade, and we would just sit there and with our fingers in the grass, plaiting the grass and twiddling and talking and listening for hours, learning about values, assessing values, going over things that choices that we're going to be making in our life. Like in those days, women wore stockings or pantyhose, and we decided that one young lady was wearing pantyhose too early. Yeah, she's 14 years old. She wore stockings the other day. Da da da. Just gossiping and assessing. But in that gossiping, we're making decisions about what kind of people we want to be. And so that's what young girls have to do. And these were all black people now, mind you. Everybody I'm talking about is black. If they're white, I'm going to tell you about them. And so we were assessing that. Well, well, you don't want to do this. I don't want to do this at this age because I'm too young for that. And this is the kind of things we were talking about. And we were sitting down personally, looking at each other, listening and talking and deciding and assessing. And it was various things that we talked about. We talked about the world and listened and assessed and decided. We walked through scenarios in our head about things. And that's what young girls need to do when they're making their life choices. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been able to have a sounding board for the things that I was considering. So I have no problem with that. You need to do that. I wish all young girls did that because they need to. They need to find their peer group. Instead of you running around with people that don't really have your values, you need to find the people who do have your values. The way to do that is learn about them and look for them. In the black neighborhood, which was very, very important thing different, is this: you could walk outside without trouble in the area that I was from. I have people who used to tell me stories about me at 2 years old when they would be bringing me back to my grandmother's house because I done snuck outside and went to the park. Yes, there people who laugh because I met them years later talking about how they used to bring me back because I done snuck outside from the park. I done snuck outside. I done unlocked the door at 2 years old, walked down those 14 steps from the living room to the front door, and walked outside, unlocked the door, locked it, and walked outside and went to the park to swing because I wanted to swing. And then they would see me in the park, pick me up, and bring me back to my grandmother's house. And and there are stories about me waking up in the middle of the night and trying to cook. So they see me at the kitchen sink out and pushed up a chair to the sink trying to get the food out. And they say I have flour all over the kitchen and everything. And they talk about me making them roach biscuits because there'd be bugs and me trying to make biscuits at the stove. And I'm like 2 years old. I'm told that I was walking at age 6 months, and my mom has pictures of me doing that. Walking, I still in diaper and little bitty thing, and I got these shoes on, and I'm standing up and walking. And there's pictures of me walking at 6 months. And later on, another relative of mine that I saw with my own eyes walk it between her sixth and seventh month. Other relatives might have walked between their seventh and eighth month. But yeah, we walked early. We had places to go. Everyone I'm naming was female in our household. So yeah, we had places to go, things to do. And in those black neighborhoods at the time, you can walk around without somebody trying to snatch you and put you in a car and drive away with you. And a few years ago, I was in town and I didn't bring my car, and the buses had stopped running. So I just went to my old neighborhood, walked those same streets, and it was like 2 in the morning. And that was not that long ago. Well, it was long enough ago, but yeah, I walked across town in the middle of the night, and nobody bothered me. But I was in a black neighborhood. When black neighborhoods mix with white neighborhoods is when you got in trouble with all this people getting disappearing, and you got to keep your child in the car. You can't let them out your sight because somebody might put them in a car and drive off with them. But it wasn't a black thing. That was a white thing. That was when we mixed with neighborhoods. It never was. No, we walked all over town as young kids. When I talk about how we walked to the convention center in our neighborhood as 10-year-olds and 9-year-olds and things and little girls, I mean it. Because we walked in and we walked all over town, and we could. It wasn't dangerous for us. Now, every once in a while, a white man from the suburbs would come to the inner city and try to get somebody in his car, and we basically cuss him out and run. Or he might be sitting in the car masturbating. We won't look as he be masturbating in his car, right? And then asking directions. So we'll look at him, and we wouldn't. We'd just point wherever the direction was. Now, if he came out that car, we would have jumped on him and tried to whoop his ass because we weren't no wimps either. But yeah, as long as you're a crowd, we would have whooped you. We've been fighting and wrestling and beating up boys all day. Yeah, we would have whooped you. But it was a different kind of neighborhood. Trouble came when we mixed with white people. Now I'm gonna come to this part where the white girl moved in. That's what I'm gonna call that one. All that previous stuff was background. Now, like I said, we didn't have sex with the boys in a neighborhood. But when this white girl moved in, this is just after urban renewal, where they tore away all these little black businesses that was in the area, but they left the projects and they built these new apartment buildings. One of the apartment buildings was where the girl moved in, and these were high-end apartment buildings. I almost want to call luxury apartment buildings. And this 16-year-old white girl who was the same age as us, but the boys went after her like sharks because they found out that she was putting out. She was having sex with them. Each one of them had sex with her. We wouldn't. Nobody of all of us 14 plus, and then in our area, us 14, nobody would have sex with the boys. The girls and things on the other blocks wouldn't have sex with them, but this white girl would. And she was our age. About a year or so later, she finally got pregnant, but every one of them had sex with her. So that's a different value system and a different mindset. They didn't respect her, they just liked having sex with her. And she would have been considered weak-minded because the rest of us didn't, because they weren't able to talk us out of it, but they did talk her out of it. And so I'm saying that's the way it is. Years later, one of the boys got arrested. I think he was just 18 and she was 17. And they caught him in the house naked with her. And finally, somebody got arrested. I think it was for statutory. But she had been humping them boys for years. Okay? she had been having sex with those little boys. They would cut school, go over to that apartment while her parents were out, and have sex with her. Everybody knew about it, but nobody, it didn't matter to us as long as it wasn't us. So that's what I'm saying about the white girl moved in. Now, I got the major stories done, and I'm gonna tell you a few of the. Oh yeah, let me go back to the this one. I'm gonna talk about the Chicago trip. Yeah, a friend of our family died, and my mom wanted to go to the funeral, to this lady's funeral. And I'm coming from the small town and going to the large town. I noticed that the boys dressed differently. From the small town, even though these boys were in the projects, they were well dressed and well maintained. They had always wore nice shoes, always wore nice clothes. Like they wore like I said, the boys wore silk underwear or silk like underwear that matched because they wanted to wear their pants low on the hips. The way they wore their pants unfastened. They had belts, but the pants were unfastened and partially unzipped. So the top button was undone and the top 2 inches of the zipper was down. On the previous one I mentioned, I told you about the what that meant. One was alpha male and one is beta male. Like the boys wear their pants down now, but they're wearing them down low on their behind. That means that's easy access to their anus, which is a male vagina, and that's a beta male position. That means I won't waiting for the alpha male to come hump me because I am the not the beta, worse than a beta, the omega male, the one way down the totem pole. This is a sign of male weakness when you're wearing your pants down in the back. These boys wore their pants loose and hanging low in the front. This is a sign of male power. Easy access to penis. All you got to do is shift a little bit and penis is out and erect and ready to hump something. So that's male power. You're ready, you got access to your penis and it's ready to hump something. Other one is male weakness. You got access to your buttocks and ready to be humped. So that's the difference. But anyway, these boys were wearing their pants low in the front, and their silk underwear would be matching top and bottom so that that's fashionably cute and can show. We were living in the days of Angela Davis and the Temptations and all of these looks. The girls wanted to be Diana Ross and the men wanted to be Temptations. And we would see movies with Pam Grier in them and all of these males, alpha males like Jim Brown and Fred Williams and all of those, and even Shaft and Sweetback and all of those. So that's where the dynamics were coming from. It was well dressed black people. I go up to Chicago, and the boys are wearing khakis and cotton shirts, so they weren't as fashionable as the boys in the hometown I was coming from. But anyway, one of the adults sent us to the store, and they sent me to walk with the two boys that were in the household. And then one of them kept putting his hands on me, and I was mortified. I couldn't believe this boy was kept putting his hands on me. Finally, I stopped him and just talked, and he finally learned that by talking to me that he was doing something extremely wrong, and he didn't understand why. And he after he did learn he was doing something wrong with just conversation, because before I was just pushing him away and stuff like that, and he was proceeding on, and I'm pushing him away, and I said, "Stop that! Will you please stop that?" And he says, and he was confused, and so we talked, and he understood that that was a no-no. And he stopped. He did stop after he understood that that wasn't what I wanted, and I was mortified and thought very low of him for proceeding after I said stop. That was enlightening for me because I didn't know that people had to put up with that. Girls didn't have to, but he was being enlightened that he didn't know the girls didn't put up with that. So that's going to be the dynamics of male female behavior in different parts of the country, and that's something we're going to have to address as black people, because that was a no-no, and he understood it after I explained it. And it wasn't no malice or meanness. He just thought that I don't know what the hell he thought, honestly, but I do know he stopped after we talked. Now the church story is going to be, these are going to be some short stories about how we did. I talk about our antics and our funny stuff that we did uh, in those days. It without video games. Most of us in our household like to read, but we didn't do video games and things like that because it wasn't there. We might play Monopoly or board games. One of my early ones that I remember was just funny was a laxative story. We had apparently got constipated, and my grandmom gave us a little bit of laxative. It gave him a piece, my uncle a piece, and me a piece of the laxative, and I think it was just a half a thing. And then finally, we felt better and had a bowel movement and and all. But anyway, he found the chocolate laxative in the foil, and my uncle did, and he decided to share it with me because he's going to eat all this candy. And he gave me, I think, one or two pieces, and he ate four. And you know where we're going with this. And then so we thought we were sneaky and got it done until it kicked in. So we're running to the toilet, and both, I think I was 4 and he was 5, and both of our little naked butts on that toilet spraying. And my grandmama looking at us with concern because he went to the bathroom first, right? And then suddenly I had to too. And so she said, "Well, sit on there," because it was coming out of me. It was about to come out of me. So I made it to the toilet, and we're both spraying. And she said, "Did y'all eat something?" And then finally we confessed that we ate the X-Lax. We could see light go off in her eyes, but we could also see extreme humor. We was looking for her to spank us or something, or get ready to spank us. We were looking for anger, but we didn't see anger. We saw extreme humor, but she was keeping a straight face, but the rest of her, everything else was tensed up with extreme laughter. She was holding back, but we knew she was thought it was funny as heck. She says, "Oh, okay. Well, y'all sit there and uh, finish what you're doing and let me know when you." So after finally after that afternoon, we ran back and forth to the bathroom, and sometimes at the same time, sometimes separate. But we spent the afternoon on the toilet, and she would tell anybody that asked that they got into the laxative, and then whoever she told it got tickled. And so they were laughing at us all afternoon. We didn't get a spanking. We expected one. They said, "No, you." It wasn't until years later till I understood what the laxative was and how actually funny that was. So keep laxatives away from your 4 and 5 year olds. Moral of the story. Now the let me see. Lump Lump versus a prostitute. This is a story. This is in high school. I'm about 11th or 12th grade or so in the high school. In our high school, which was all black students and mostly black teachers, we were funny kids. And the afternoon was spent when there's a lull in class, would be talking about each other with funny stuff, just funny scenarios where you're thinking abstract and talking funny things. And so one of the people that was in the classroom that day was a male that we call Lump Lump. We called him Lump Lump was because he had very bad pimples, and they were big, like almost like ball like pimples, and they were just bumps all over his face. And not only did we call him Lump Lump, he answered to Lump Lump. There was the next person in this story is going to be the prostitute. We had people from all walks of life in our classroom. So one of them was a girl that worked out on the prostitute. She was a prostitute, and she worked out on the street after school. Went to the prostitute area, and if you ever wanted to buy her services, you go to that particular street, and she'll get in your car and be a prostitute. Lump Lump was hanging out with the cool guy that day, and we were in the classroom, and so the cool guys just interact with the people in the classroom. And at this time, the cool guy was the guy, he also sold drugs, and we're talking marijuana, not no other stuff, and maybe some pills here and there. But anyway, he was hanging out with the cool guy because the cool guy was in the classroom with us, and we're all just there. And I don't know what got into Lump Lump that day, but he looked over at the prostitute and said, "Ho, give me some money." It went on, and she looked at him, and we had already started falling out laughing because just by her stopping, turning, and looking at him. She cussed that man for 45 minutes. She said if you and she talked about all the body things he had to do for her to get her money, and we died laughing because she was saying some funny stuff. He couldn't fall through his seat, so he had to sit there and take it because he couldn't handle her. So yeah, spoiler alert. Lump Lump versus the prostitute. The prostitute won. Okay, that was like an afternoon in our school. Like, let's see, the swimming story. Okay, me and my good girlfriends, we decided to be Girl Scouts, and one of the afternoons was us going to this swimming pool. We went to the swimming pool, right, and saw that the lifeguard was this cute guy. This new cute guy that had came to the neighborhood, and he was cute. He was black and he was cute, and I think he was mixed race or something. But anyway, we considered him very handsome. So he's a lifeguard. Us in our brilliance, we decided to jump in the water and pretend like we're drowning so he can rescue us. Mind you, we didn't think this through because you can only rescue one person at a time. So we all jumped in the water hollering about help, 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 rescue me, I'm drowning, right? His butt goes and rescues a curvy girl with a big breast. He went to the girl with the big bosoms. I'm over there. I really can't swim. I'm really about to drown. Okay, so my good friend, my best friend, wound up saving me and getting me to the side of the pool because I couldn't swim. I actually couldn't swim. But yeah, he's over there helping a pretty girl with the curves and the hips and stuff like that. Us, the rest of us, kind of straight up and down, but there's always this curvy girl in the crowd. So that yeah, so don't pull that one. If he's gonna choose one, he's gonna choose a cute one. So don't ever pull the jump in the pool with the lifeguard thing. Don't do that one. It's dangerous. You might actually drown if you ain't got no curves. Okay. I got 1,000 stories like that where we were just silly antics. Let's see, the church story. This one is, God, this one is funny because there was this guy I liked at church, right? He actually had another girlfriend, but and I wasn't gonna tell him, but I still liked him, and he kind of liked me, and we make eyes and stuff like that, right? But in church, when you get ready to have the youth choir, they may have a second floor. So me and my friend went down there and got on the front row of of that thing so we can watch the choir. And it was his turn to sing. And we sitting there gonna watch him sing and admire him. Except he sang terrible. It was bad. And normally we would die laughing, falling out, but we're right in his face. Not only are we right in his face, his friends and family is all around us. The hardest thing I ever did in my life was keep a straight face. That was difficult. And not only did and I had to keep a straight face, and my friend over there, I knew she was dying and she had to keep a straight face too. We were almost in tears, holding back guffaws of laughter. But we sat there and I couldn't look at her because I would have died laughing. I would have broke. I would have broke. So we had to sit through that song as he's trying to hit these hoarse high notes and these low notes and terrible, terrible singing. Ugh. That was hard. So after the song, we quietly got up, got out, walked slowly down the street and around the corner and fell out. It's still funny as heck to me that I couldn't look at her because if I looked at her, I would have lost it. And she couldn't look at me because she would have lost it. So we sat there frozen and stared at him and tried, and we did. We succeeded in not laughing. Thank everything divine because we wouldn't have never been welcome in that church again if we made it out. Those are the kind of things that happen when you don't have video games. I got some more stories there, but I'm at about 50, at almost an hour. Let's see. I'm going to try to tell one in 4 minutes. Among the things I heard about this story, I wasn't there, but us being silly kids, I can picture them. Okay, the girls are walking down the street, right? And then they stop and they look up. They right at the bus stop, and there's this man at the bus stop, and they stop and look up and start pointing and looking. And then finally, the man looked up. Wasn't nothing up there, but they thought that was funny to make that man look up. And they looked and pointing and talking and pointing and looking, and then finally he looked up. Like one of the kind where they put the hand on the hip and rear back. Okay, that's what they made him do, and they consider that really funny. That's hysterical stuff. And then the next one I'm gonna tell you is I call it I Tried to Die. This is me in high school, right? There's this cute boy that I flirt with in my classroom, and the teacher's gone and everybody gone, and I'm still doing a little project. But all day long, there was this young man that was swinging on this bar, that doing push-ups and pull-up and swinging on the bar. I finally get up on the bar and I'm gonna do a push-up, except the bar fell and I fell flat on my face off the chair. The cute boy came over to me. He said, "Are you all right?" I'm down, face down. Yeah, I'm fine. He put my dress down, back down where it's supposed to be at, and helped me up. He said, "I'm glad you're okay." He put me in my chair, straightened my clothes a little bit. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. He left, and I just said, even as I was laying on my face down there, I'm saying, can the floor at least swallow me? Can I at least be hurt? Can I at least be dead? Did I break anything? At least break something. But no, I was perfectly fine as I laid on my face, as I fell on the bench. I mean, fell on the floor. From what I understood, he went to the men's room across the hall, leaned on the wall, and slid down and then laughed because he couldn't even make it barely into the door, apparently. But yeah, I tried to die. And when you fall on your face in front of the cute boy, it won't let you die. I tried. And yeah, we stayed friends years after. But yeah, I tried to die, but it didn't work. Try not to fall on your face in front of the cute boy. Yeah, those are the. Let's see. Uh, I got the I fell on ice story. This is me where me and my friend is going to church, right? And I'm in this cute little dress. But anyway, we mad. I'm mad at her, and so I decided to walk over on the side. It was a snowy day around Easter, around April, and there was ice, but I didn't see ice. I'm gonna strut away and walk away from her because I'm mad at her. She's still walking where she was, except I slipped on the ice. And she said she blinked, I was slipping. I blinked, she blinked, I was still slipping. And then she blinked again, I was up in the air. She blinked, I was still in the air. She blinked again, I was still in the air. And she blinked, I was on the way down. And apparently the people on the bus were laughing at me after they didn't see me slip. So I'm laying over there in them cute little dress on the ice, and I slipped. That wasn't funny. But yeah, so be careful. Don't walk off in a huff. Don't walk off in a huff and get on the ice and slip, because your friend will blink several times while you're still in the air on the way down. Okay. Now I'm at about 58 minutes. That's just to talk about some of the things that went on in the 60s in my experience. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is going to be a preamble to a follow up when I talk about females in the 60s and why black women have esteem problems right now and what's going on with the young black ladies. But I had to say all of this stuff before I got to that. Okay, thanks. This was fun to do. Thank you for listening to me. Bye bye.